Hi, Reverend Paula Zabkar here from Spiritual Soul Center. I want to share with you today a parable from the Buddhist tradition, and it goes like this. Kisa Gotami lived at the time of the Buddha. Her son died, and she was overcome with grief. Carrying his lifeless body, she set off in search of Buddha. After many days, she found him and pled with him to bring her child back to life. The Buddha said he'd make a medicine that would revive him, but it required a special ingredient, mustard seeds that came from a home that hadn't been touched by suffering. And so he sent Kisa Gotami to find some seeds from that home. Well, as you might imagine, Kisa Gotami spent a lot of time knocking on doors, and many people had the mustard seeds that she was looking for. But unfortunately, in every case, it was not from a home that was untouched by suffering. And by the time she came to the 1,000th door and knocked on that door and found the same response, she finally was able to recognize the truth of our human condition, that there isn't any one of us who doesn't suffer. She wept, and she wasn't crying for herself at that time, but for everyone she'd met, because you might imagine the stories that she found out along the way. She understood at last what the Buddha wanted her to understand, is that none of us escape suffering, and that no one escapes death. She had experienced what she needed in order to get past her grief. She felt compassion for others. I don't think we make that connection very often, that to get past our own suffering is to realize and to feel compassion for all beings. As soon as she felt that, as soon as she grasped the universality of suffering and the impermanence of life, that is when she was able to accept her son's death, and she was freed from her pain. She was freed from that constant pain of it when she realized the connection we have to each other and that we all have that experience. It's such a good reminder, because some days and some weeks and some months and years we find ourselves deep in suffering. The death and loss of a loved one, any loss of any kind. And we always want to have the answer to the question, why? Why is this happening to me? Why am I the one that's suffering this way? Why do I have to deal with this? I think it's one of the worst questions that we can ask ourselves, is the why. Because even if we knew the why, of some horrible thing, it wouldn't satisfy us, because we would still be in the place of suffering, this place of pain. But when we shift our mind and our consciousness into this place of realizing that there is no one who doesn't suffer, that we all have a death sentence, as it were, that we realize and we can set ourselves at ease in compassion and empathy for ourselves and for others. It takes a minute, but we can get there. Until next time.